Hey everybody, Quantum here, and in this video I thought I would make a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown video for my new account that is essentially free to play. All we did was invest some time to play through some solo mode, get some free gems, and redeem them for the Vortex of Magic structure deck. We've taken this account into ranked. You can see here we've played 15 duels with the Dark Magician deck. We've won 14, so that's a 93% win rate, and it's essentially entirely free to play. So let's go ahead and break down how I approach this new account, what I did, and you can definitely mirror this, make this free to play, and have some success climbing through the rank ladder. Before I get started though, I just want to let you know you can check the description for a timeline of events in this video, so you can skip ahead to the section that you want, as well as links to matches of me using this deck in the ladder, where we actually did play against some pretty decent decks like Sky Strikers and things like that, and how we kind of overcame those decks, because I do break those down in some of the plays that we do. In addition to that, I am streaming this series, and the goal is to try to get to Diamond 5 at least with this deck, and keeping it entirely free to play. So if you're interested in seeing that, again, you can check the channel for those videos, because I do highlights of the streams, but also if you want to catch the stream, feel free to subscribe and get those notifications when we do stream. Anyways, to start off, the Vortex of Magic structure deck in the shop here is 500 gems for one copy, and you can buy up to 3. So that's 1,500 gems, and you're going to get a pretty decent overall value here. Now, unfortunately, a lot of these cards are not going to be played in the version that you want to make for the rank ladder, but you do get a lot of very high value cards. You can see there's about 5 different ultra rares in the main deck, and then 2 in the extra deck, I think. And then you get a lot of super rares as well. So it's a pretty good value structure deck. And it gives you access to essentially the Dark Magician engine, which is a very fun deck to play as well, by the way. Not everything is about playing the top tier where, Runic Sprite and it's kind of boring and blah, 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 blah. So let's go ahead and get into the actual Dark Magician deck. From the Vortex of Magic structure deck, you're actually going to get 3 Dark Magicians, 3 Magician's Soul, which is the card that you discard, and then you send a Dark Magician from your deck to the graveyard to special summon the Dark Magician that you just sent to the graveyard to your field. 3 Magician's Rod, which is your consistency searcher card. You summon it, you search for things like Dark Magical Circle, Eternal Soul, Magician's Salvation, Dark Magic Attack, etc. Secrets of Dark Magic, blah, 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 blah. 3 Illusion of Chaos, which is your ultimate engine card. You activate this card in your hand, you bring a Magician's Soul, a Magician's Rod, or a Dark Magician to your hand, and then you put back a card in your hand to your deck. And then obviously you can extend by activating Magician's Soul or Magician's Rod, just like how I explained. This card, super clutch. When it came out with the structure deck, it's what made Dark Magician competitive, or somewhat competitive. It's not a top tier deck by any means, but it's definitely a lot more viable now than it was before. And there are reports on Master Duel Meta of people hitting Diamond 1 with Dark Magician. Anyways, moving along, 1 Dark Magic Attack. I like this, especially in the earlier ranks, because this is a searchable Feather Duster, essentially. You can search it off Eternal Soul, and you can search it off Magician's Rod. I also play 2 Eye of Timaeus. For some reason, even though this card mentions Dark Magician, you can't search it with Soul Servant, you can't pick it up at Dark Magical Circle, and I don't think you can search it with Magician's Rod. So it is a little bit sad, but this card I find super clutch. I might actually keep this in my deck longer term, because I know this wasn't played in some of the top tier decks. They opt for Super Poly instead. But this card essentially allows you to play it, target a Dark Magician, and that becomes your only fusion material that you need to bring out any of your Dark Magician fusion. So these cards require Dark Magician plus some other card to use, and you don't need the other card, you just need the Dark Magician. So this is nice because it puts the Dark Magician in your graveyard, which is one of the key concepts of the deck. I'll go over that in a bit, but it also brings out a very powerful fusion monster that you can use on your field as well. 1 Magician's Salvation, just because you really don't need this card all that much, because you're not playing Dark Magician Girl, and I don't recommend you play it because it is a brick. If you do draw it, it's really bad. I mean, yes, you can recycle it with Illusion of Chaos, but it's just not really worth it in my opinion. You basically just play this card so that you can set the Eternal Soul from your deck, in my opinion. That's really all I've used it for so far. It might have some other utility, but I haven't really explored it too much. That's all I've really used it for, because there's another field spell that you actually want to craft that is way better. It's actually probably the best card in the deck, but we'll go over that a little bit later. Dark Magical Circle ×2. This is probably your main setup card for your combos, because when you activate this, the nice thing is it's kind of like a mini Pot of Duality, where you can just excavate the top 3 cards, and if one of them is a Dark Magician spell or trap or actual Dark Magician card, you can add it to your hand, so it's nice free card advantage. But you can also arrange the cards on the top of your deck in any order, so it's very nice for that as well. But when this is on the field, anytime a Dark Magician is normal or special summoned to your field, you target one card your opponent controls and banish it. So it does target, but it banishes spell or traps and monsters, right? As long as they can be targeted. So, and not unaffected by your opponent's card effects. So this card is basically infinite card advantage because it's a continuous spell. And like I briefly mentioned, your goal of this deck is to cycle Dark Magician. You want to get it on the field, you want to put it in your graveyard. You want to get it on your field, put it in your graveyard, right? You want to do that constantly because doing that will allow you to trigger Dark Magical Circle on your turn and your opponent's turn. And this is how you kind of gain infinite card advantage, shutting down your opponent's combo, doing interruptions, etc., and really doing the magician thing, right, with the deck. 3 Soul Servant, this is a really good card, quick play, ultra rare, consistency searcher, place 1 card basically from your deck to the top of your deck that is a Dark Magician or a Dark Magician card. And then you can banish this card from your graveyard. In the same turn you activate it to draw cards up to the number of Dark Magician, basically it's just Dark Magicians in your graveyard because you're not going to have Dark Magician Girl or Palladium monsters either. So as long as there's a Dark Magician on your field or graveyard, you banish this card, you draw 1 card. So whatever card you stacked, you draw it. So it's really good for that. And this card can search out like Circle, it can search out Secrets, it can search out Salvation, it can search Dark Magic Attack. So basically anything that Rod can search, this can search as well. Which is kind of nice because if one of these get ashed or this gets impermed, if you have this as well, it can help you play through that interruption on that your opponent has, like the hand trap. So it's very nice for that as well. 1 Secrets of Dark Magic. This card is actually kind of clutch because, like I said, it is a searchable, so you only need a 1 of it. And you can essentially use it to bring out Illusion of Chaos. So again, if you have a Dark Magician on the field, you can activate the Secrets of Dark Magic, sack the Dark Magician on your field, ritual summon Illusion of Chaos. And Illusion of Chaos, I've actually used this effect. Quick effect, Monster Negate. Return it to the hand, so again, you don't lose it, doesn't like go to the graveyard or anything. It actually comes back to your hand, which means you can use it for its engine piece, where you can veil it and bring cards to your hand again. And then when it goes back to your hand and you negate that monster effect, you special summon out a Dark Magician. So the Dark Magician you use for the ritual summon and putting it in the graveyard, it's a free special summon back to the field, which will trigger off your circle, hopefully, right? So it's a very nice combination of synergistic cards that will really help you utilize your engine even further. And with with Soul Servant, you can actually put this card from your graveyard back to the top of your deck if you want. So you only really need 1 because the odds you're going to need to use this multiple times, probably not that often unless you get into a really long drawn-out grind game. But even then, there's probably better options. But you have that utility to use. 2 Eternal Soul, just in case one gets outed or something, you do have a second copy. And what's nice is with Eye of Timaeus and Eternal Soul, if you can get this Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight on the field, it becomes a Dark Magician, which means it becomes unaffected by all your opponent's card effects if you have Eternal Soul on the field. And yeah, Eternal Soul can be bad because if it leaves the field, it's going to wipe your monsters, right? It's going to destroy every monster you control. But with this card on your field, Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight, it protects your back row from being targeted, so you can't Cosmic Cyclone and banish the Eternal Soul to trigger it to destroy everything. And you can't like Feather Duster it, which doesn't target, but it does destroy. So these cards work in tandem to protect each other, which is really nice. These other 2 fusions, which are the ultra rares, ironically, aren't really that useful. I'm not going to really go over them because you will probably never summon them, but you can just read them, and you're basically going to just get a generic effect, draw 1 anytime a spell or trap is activated during your opponent's or your turn, which is actually pretty strong. But again, I think Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight, is better for the most part, at least earlier on in the ranks. Maybe later on in the ladder where you maybe have to cut this card, the Dark Magicians might be better, but that's neither here nor there right now. And then Master of Chaos, in my opinion, isn't really that good because the only effect you're really going to get from this is when it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you get 1 spell card in your graveyard back to your hand. It is nice as a 3000 body, but this is also a 3000 body and it has a much more powerful effect in my opinion. So that's what you get from the Vortex of Magic structure deck. So you get a lot of the core of the deck for free. And then when you look at what you have to craft, this is pretty straightforward. You get Max C's, which is a staple in every deck in Master Duel, so it's not like you're wasting ultra rare points just for this Dark Magician deck. Same with Terraforming. Every deck pretty much plays a field spell these days. These are staples in every deck in Master Duel, and you're going to play them in Dark Magician as well. So it's helping you craft staples for later on in the game, but also very useful for the deck currently. Preparation of Rites. This is a card that you will only use likely in Dark Magician, but you do need to play at least 2, in my opinion 3 though, longer term, because you want to be able to search for Illusion of Chaos. In my opinion, Dark Ruler No More is becoming a staple in Master Duel as we are now in Sprite format and will be entering Tier Limit format. You need Dark Ruler to negate the opponent's board. It's very, very important because your opponent can't respond to it, and unless they have a spell or trap negate to negate the Dark Ruler, they can't out this card, and it shuts down your opponent's board. So when your opponent has Sprite Carrot, Sprite Red, and all these negates on board, you Dark Ruler, it shuts all of that down. Pot of Prosperity, you don't have to play this, but I do just because in the earlier ranks, I don't have a fully teched out extra deck, so I can afford to banish cards from my extra deck. And even later on, honestly, like in the top tiers of Platinum and Gold, when you flesh out your deck entirely, you can still play this card because, I mean, in the TCG and OCG, this card is absolutely broken. Being able to dig 6 deep into your deck and pick up the card that you need, it's drawing the out, right? And the drawbacks of this card is essentially non-existent for Dark Magician, so it's a good card to play, in my opinion, just as a staple, as it is in pretty much every deck, to be honest. Secret Village of the Spellcasters is, in my opinion, the best card in the deck, at least for now. In the 15 matches I played, the matches where I resolved this, it was like auto win. Runic Sprite, they can't play Runic cards. Branded, they can't play Branded Fusion, right? It's pretty much super clutch. So basically, right, if only you control the spellcaster, so be aware of that. Your opponent can somehow get a spellcaster on board, aka like Sprite can make a dark, and then they control the spellcaster, so now they can play all of their Runic cards now. So be aware of that. But if only you control the spellcaster, your opponent cannot activate spell cards. So again, this shuts down like Branded Fusion, all the Runic cards, etc. But if they somehow out your spellcaster, then you can activate spell cards. This is usually not too much of a big deal because, you know, you can Eternal Soul back a Dark Magician or something like that, get a spellcaster back on board and regain the Floodgate effect. But you do have to be careful because it can backfire on you as well. And if it does lock you out of your own spells, you likely lose, so it'll likely be a scoop. But usually that's not going to be the case, especially if you go first and you set this up. It's pretty much GG's. And it also stops every Pendulum deck, by the way, because they can't Pendulum scale as long as this is on the field. Unless they normal summon a spellcaster, obviously. But again, if you go first and you set this up, you can easily out the spellcaster by, you know, Eternal Souling a Dark Magician and banishing whatever they normal summon before they can even activate Pendulum Scales. And then they lose their normal summon, they can't special summon, it's GG's. In addition to that, Evenly Matched. So again, just like with Dark Ruler, this is another going second card. But again, with Sprite, like you activate Dark Ruler and then you activate Evenly Matched, that's essentially GG's, right? They can't Sprite Carrot negate the Evenly or something because you've already negated all the monster effect with Dark Ruler, and Sprite doesn't play Solemn Judgment or anything. I don't think really that is spell or trap negate, so Evenly Matches essentially GG's against them, as well as, you know, GG's against a lot of other decks as well. So again, in Sprite format and as we move into Tier Limit format, Evenly Matched is super strong. If you play TCG or OCG, you already know how good this card is. And then in my opinion, what's the best Floodgate for the earlier parts of the ladder in ranked mode is Summon Limit for this deck, because it'll essentially shut down every deck that you'll encounter more or less in ranked mode. The only deck that I did lose to, by the way, was Numeron, which Summon Limit doesn't really impact because all the Numeron monsters are summoned in one summon, so they can get out all 4 at the same time, and Summon Limit doesn't shut that down, and that's how I lost. And Numeron is an OTK deck, so if I didn't stop it on turn 1, I lose anyways. So Summon Limit will stop every other deck though. Sprite can only summon twice. You know, people can't make Zeus against you really with this card up. You know, and like every deck like Sword Soul, etc., like they can't extend with this card on the field. So it's pretty much an auto win against a lot of decks. I don't like using the term auto win, but it's very hard to out. And you can already kind of see, hopefully, the combination of some of these cards in conjunction with each other, like shutting down all of your opponent's spells while also shutting down all of their summons, or, you know, limiting their summons to 2. Your opponent can't really play out of that. So if you go first and you resolve some of these cards, especially with like the Dark Magician's, the Eternal Soul and the Dark Magical Circle and or that fusion monster that protects your back row, yeah, it's pretty much GG's. Like, it's very hard for your opponent to beat that. So going first, you have a lot of utility. Going second, you have Board Breakers, which is what we opted to play instead of like Ash Blossom and Imperms. You do play Maxi, but every deck plays Maxi. So the deck is pretty strong. Extra deck wise, I just opted for some pretty generic cards. So Link Spider and Imduck. Imduck is just a rare, but Link Spider you get for free in the solo mode. And then you might just have to craft an Artemis. You make this so that you can link off the Magician's Rod and put it in your graveyard, because Magician's Rod, we'll go to the full deck here, Magician's Rod's effect is if you activate a spell or trap during your opponent's turn, you can tribute a spellcaster monster and add this card to your hand. So this is nice because say you flip up your Eternal Soul, you don't have to use the effect. You can flip up Eternal Soul. If a Dark Magician is already on your field, you can activate Magician's Rod, tribute the Dark Magician, put it in your graveyard, bring the Magician's Rod back to your hand, then activate the Eternal Soul effect, special summon the Dark Magician you just sacked, bring it to the field, and then trigger the Circles effect to banish a card your opponent controls. So you can see you have a lot of like tricky effects that you can use to really interrupt your opponent and get a lot of card advantage out of it. Like you get your Magician's Rod back to your hand, you can use it next turn. Really strong for things like that. And that's why you play Artemis, because you want to be able to link off the Magician's Rod to put it in your graveyard. You also play Imduck and a Link Spider to link off the Dark Magician, because again, if you end turn 1 on Dark Magician and you have an Eternal Soul set, you need a way to put that Dark Magician in the graveyard so that when you Eternal Soul it back to the field, you can trigger your Circle, which I've already explained how you can get Circle to your hand with like Soul Servant and Magician's Rod, etc. You need to put this Dark Magician in your graveyard. So if you have no other way to put it in your graveyard, you can link it off with Imduck or Link Spider, put it in your graveyard, and then bring it back during your opponent's turn as an interruption with Eternal Soul. In addition to that, some of the Xyz monsters, Ebon Illusion Magician, you really only play this if you play 3 Dark Magician, because you're making this with 2 Dark Magicians. Then you detach one of those Dark Magicians and you search the third one out to your field. And then you can trigger off some of these other effects with it as well. Like when you attack with that Dark Magician that you summon to your field, you can activate Ebon's other effect to banish a monster, which is nice. I've actually used that a couple times in matches. Dark Armed, again, 2 rank 7, so 2 Dark Magicians, detach a material, destroy a card in the field, then banish a card from the graveyard. And Harmonizer, I've never really summoned this yet, but you can just read it. It's a pretty straightforward effect. Yeah, this deck, as it is very powerful for the lower ranks in the ladder. We will be making changes as we probably approach the end of Gold, Platinum, and hopefully Diamond. And what the deck will probably look like at the end is maybe removing the 2 Eye of Timaeus for 2 Super Polys. This is good because it's just another board breaker against Sprite. This card, Earth Golem Adigneister, you may wonder why Dark Magician plays this, but it's basically essentially just for Sprite, because the Sprite board ends on Sprite Elf, which is a Link monster, and IP Masquerade, which is a Cyberse monster. So you Super Poly those away, they can't respond to it. You discard a card, you target both of their monsters, you get it off the field, you bring out the Earth Golem Adigneister. So very powerful for that. Also, Super Poly can help out some things, bring out Mud Dragon. If they're playing Dark, if you're playing against a Dark deck, which is a very popular archetype, you can bring out Starving Venom. If you're playing against Branded, you can bring out Dragocepalia or any other fusion deck. So there is some utility there. As well, you can play these Dark Magician fusions at 1 each. In case your opponent's playing a Dragon monster, you can actually Super Poly away a Dark Magician on your field and a Dragon monster your opponent controls. Or you can just fusion someone with Super Poly and or Secrets of Dark Magic for the Dark Magicians. Although you probably would never do that, but it is there just in case. I opted to play Big Eye as my only Xyz. You could opt to play this deck differently and go for a larger Xyz package in order to play Zeus, but I don't think it's really needed because I wanted to stick true more so to Dark Magician, which is probably a mistake, but it's more fun that way in my opinion. But Big Eye is essentially a permanent change of heart, so you make this with the 2 Dark Magicians that you now play in the deck instead of 3, which is why we don't play Ebon Illusion Magician anymore. And then you detach a material, take your opponent's monster. Again, it's good because it puts a Dark Magician in your graveyard, and then you can also steal an opponent's monster, trigger your souls, bring back the Dark Magician you just detached, trigger Circle, banish a card, so it's just, again, a lot of card advantage. I used to continue to play the 2 Link 1s. You probably want to play an IP just so you can go into Nightmare Unicorn, so again, this is standard across other decks as well. You can afford to play Dark because you play Dark monsters, obviously. You can play the BLS as well, which is nice because you'll likely be making this with a Dark Magician, which is a level 7 monster, which means that the BLS will gain the effect to be unable to be targeted and cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effect. So they can only beat over this card essentially. There's a couple other ways to out it, obviously, but that's essentially the main way. And if you do destroy monsters with this card, you gain some insane effects. So it's nice for that. And then finally, the Selene into Access Code package. So again, Sky Striker plays this. It's pretty straightforward. Essentially, you get 3 monsters out, you link it off into Selene. Or again, you can do like IP and a monster into Selene as long as one is a spellcaster. And you get at least 3+ counters because you play a ton of spells and it gains a counter for each spell in the graveyard. And then you remove 3 counters, bring back a spellcaster, and then you link off that spellcaster and then link 3 into Access Code. Access Code gains 3000 attack because Selene was used, which is a link 3. So it's a 5300 access code that can pop at least, you know, one card by banishing Selene, if not more. But if you use like IP and it's in your graveyard already, or Link Spider, you can just banish cards with access code, pop cards on the field, and attack for 5,300. Hopefully it'll be game, but it's very powerful for that as well. Now, in addition to that, Skill Drain is the final card I think that you would probably want to play. And basically you play this because it's more detrimental to your opponent most likely than it's going to be to you. And the reason I say that is because Magician's Souls activates in your hand, Illusion of Chaos activates in your hand. It's unaffected by Skill Drain. The only thing that's really detrimental to you is Magician's Rod. But your whole engine around Eternal Soul, Illusion of Chaos, Dark Magical Circle, and bringing Dark Magician to your field from your graveyard and back and forth is completely unaffected by Skill Drain. So this card synergizes well with the deck, and this card is so good against pretty much every other deck in the format. It's just like, I don't want to say a one card win, but it's a very powerful card. It can be very, very strong. Again, especially when you play it with some of the other floodgates that you play, like you still play Secret Village and you still play Summon Limit. So other versions of this deck, again, like I said, there's other variations. You can play like Gozen Match, I've seen in the top tier decks, which is very effective and things like that. But I think that this version should be good, but we'll see as I progress through the ranks. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. The final thing I'll cover here is key weaknesses. So like I mentioned, Dark Magician is by no means a top tier deck, but people have hit Diamond 1 with it. They have hit Diamond, and I'm going to attempt to hit Diamond as well throughout Season 15. I don't know if I'll be able to make it because this account's been around for 12 days and I've only been able to play 15 matches. I work a lot, unfortunately, so it's hard to find time to play on an alt account. But the weaknesses of this deck is obviously things like Ash and Imperm. If your Preparation of Rites get ashed, your Illusion of Chaos can get ashed. You won't lose the Illusion of Chaos, but it'll negate the effect for the turn, which means you'll have to wait next turn. And sometimes, as you guys know, hopefully Yu-Gi-Oh, all you need is one turn to really shut down the game, because either you set up an unbreakable board or you OTK your opponent. They can Imperm or Ash Blossom Magician's Rod, which can really shut down your plays as well. But again, you have some extensions through it, right? With like, hopefully you have Soul Servant or something that you can extend through or whatnot, or you have Floodgates to stop your opponent, just like how they stopped you, etc. So it's a like with Yu-Gi-Oh, right? It's a game of balance, counterbalance, etc. They stop you, you stop them. We'll see who comes out on top or who outplays who, I guess, right? So the deck isn't invincible by any means, but no deck is. And what's nice is even if you go first and you can't set up your combo, if you can at least prevent your opponent from going off, let's say you do have a Skill Drain or a Summon Limit or Secret Village and you're able to keep a Spellcaster on the field or get some kind of half board on field. If you go turn 2, you still have your turn 2 cards, right? Or you know, turn 3, I should say. Like your second turn, but the game's turn 3. If you have your turn 2 going, your going second cards in your hand, like Dark Ruler and Evenly Matched, you can get right back into the game, right? So it's not necessarily a complete wash if you do get stopped. You can still continue playing, and it's not just worth saying, oh, I'm just going to surrender if I get my combo interrupted, because undoubtedly you will get your combo interrupted in probably more games than you will have that it won't get interrupted, but you have the ability to play through it. And that's what this game is all about, right? Thinking through the puzzles and trying to come out on top. Won't always work. You'll definitely take a lot of losses along the way, probably. I'm expecting to lose a lot. I don't expect that 93% win rate to hold up, but we'll see how it goes. The final thing that really cripples this deck is banishing. So obviously Kashtira is not in the game yet, but when it does come to the game, this deck will likely fall to the wayside. Dimension Shifter, which is now at 2, which actually helps this deck, will also be a detriment to this deck. Macrocosmos, Dimensional Fissure, obviously, things that banish monsters, Call by the Graves, etc. You need your Dark Magician, right? So if it does get banished, you could be at a severe disadvantage, so keep that in mind as well. But hey, no deck is invincible, right? But just keep those things in mind as you play, and if you try to play around those things, you should be okay. Some of the strengths of the deck, it doesn't play into Nibiru, so Nibiru is a dead card against this deck. You play Summon Limit, so you're not really summoning more than twice per turn usually anyways. So Max C is usually just a 1-for-1 when it's played against you, which is nice as well. You don't have to really worry about people playing Max C against you. Kind of like Floowandereeze in that match. Max C is a completely dead card against Flunder, so that's really nice as well. So just like it has some negatives, it also has some positives. So it's not a complete jank deck by any means. It is a deck that I think can do well. and hopefully you join me on my journey in trying to make this deck viable. But that is my in-depth breakdown. Again, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much. Hopefully this has helped in allowing you to see how Dark Magician can be played and stay competitive. And again, check the description if you want to see some of the actual matches. I try to break down my matches in terms of my thought process and trying to predict what my opponent is going to do and how I respond. So if you find that kind of stuff useful, I think you'll find my match breakdowns or my matches with this deck useful. So check those videos out as well. But that's going to wrap up the video, guys. Thank you again if you've made it this far for watching. Quantum is out.